If you're struggling to grow on X, you're probably following outdated advice. The algorithm recently got a massive overhaul, and strategies that used to work before are now less effective. So in this video, I'm going to share what's changed, what it means for creators, and what's working now. In years past, engagement was a big part of the recommendation algorithm. So if one of your posts got a ton of engagement early on, then it would get pushed to more people. Whereas if a post did not get very much engagement, then the algorithm would not push it. But with the new algorithm, this is no longer the case. As Elon Musk explained here, the new algorithm is powered by AI. So AI will read your post, and then based on the content of the post itself, that's going to determine who sees it. These changes are still being made, but I've already noticed a difference in how my content gets traction. Under the old system, I could tell after about 30 minutes how my post was going to perform, because if it stopped getting engagement, it would stop getting shown. Under the new algorithm, I've noticed that posts will often get less engagement early on, but then they will keep getting pushed for about 24 hours. So even if something looks like it underperformed at first, it will often get picked up several hours later and get a bunch of engagement. And there's two main things I've learned from this. The first is that what time you post is now less important. Before, it was better to post when your followers were most active, because then there was a better chance they would engage early on and your post would get shown to more people. However, when your content can get pushed for up to 24 hours, that just doesn't matter as much. Now, obviously, if your niche is news-based, then timing is still going to matter a lot. But if you're not in a news-based niche, I wouldn't worry as much about posting time. All right, then the second thing I've learned is that the reply guy strategy is not as important either. Similar to my last point, it used to be helpful to reply to a bunch of accounts right before you posted, because then there was a good chance they would reply back and your content would get boosted. But when posts are promoted based on the content of the post itself, instead of just how much engagement it has, these replies become a lot less powerful. Now, I'm sure that engagement still plays some role in how the AI evaluates your content. It's just going to be much more important that your content is actually interesting. And I think this is a much needed change, because not only is it going to make a better user experience, it's also going to be a lot harder to game the system. Under the old algorithm, people would use engagement groups to get a ton of engagement on a post early on, and then that would trick the algorithm into showing it to more people. But with all the focus on the content itself, these engagement groups are going to be a lot less effective. Now, I know what you're thinking. If all the focus is on content, what content will perform the best? Well, I can't speak for the platform as a whole, but I can share a few trends I've noticed from my own content. The first one is that posts with media tend to get more impressions. So a couple months ago, getting 200 to 400 impressions was pretty normal for me. However, after some experimentation, I noticed that every time I included a picture, my content was getting about 5 to 10 times more impressions, even if the engagement numbers were the same. One example is this post I made on vacation, where even though it got similar engagement numbers to a regular post, it got over 2,000 impressions. Another example is this one that actually got less engagement, yet got more impressions. And when I noticed this, I started making an effort to include media as much as possible. And eventually, those engagement numbers started to catch up. Like on this post about Mr. Beast, or on this one where I shared my opinion on the monetization program. And the reason I believe media makes such a big difference is because it increases dwell time on your content. And this is something that platforms care a lot about, because the longer you spend on their platform, the more money they're going to make. That being said, this really only works if the media is relevant to the post. If you add a random picture just for the sake of including media, it could actually detract from the main content and make your post perform worse. The best case scenario is when the media is the main point of the post, like this example here. I could theoretically still post that X payouts are just the tip of the iceberg, but the post would be less interesting without the screenshot backing up the claim. After all, that's the whole reason I made the post in the first place, was to showcase this DM that I received. Alright, the next trend is related to the first one. I've noticed that people love it when I showcase my journey and progress. One example of this is a string of posts I made while I was upgrading my setup. It all started with this post, which then sparked a chain of quote posts as I bought a couple lights, tested different setups, and eventually found what I wanted. Every single one of these posts got over 1,000 impressions, and then it all culminated with this post, which was the best performer of all of them in terms of engagement. And the main thing I learned from this experience was that people don't just want to hear opinions and advice 24/7. They want to see that I'm a real person who's on a journey just like them. So the main takeaway here is to try and tell stories with your content. If you're running a personal account, the stories could be about you, but they also don't have to be, as evidenced by the Mr. Beast post I shared earlier. People just love stories. Alright, then the third trend I noticed is that my posts usually perform better when I don't overthink it. This isn't really an algorithm hack per se, but I've noticed that whenever I sit down and force myself to come up with an idea, it almost always underperforms because I'm just posting to check off a box. My best content happens when an idea pops into my head, I type it up and hit send. Whether it's a reaction to another post, an insight I had in real life, or just a win I wanted to share. If you're spending more than 5 minutes trying to come up with an idea, 99% of the time it's gonna underperform because it will feel forced. Trust me, people can tell when you're trying too hard. Now, I do want to clarify, I'm not saying you shouldn't take more than 5 minutes to write a post. I'm just saying that if you're trying to force yourself to come up with an idea, that's when things are not going to go so well. All right, so as you can see, by noticing these trends and adjusting my content strategy, I've been able to get a lot more attention on my account. Just in the last couple weeks, I've had multiple posts take off and I've gained over 200 followers. And this may not seem like a lot to you, but for me, my follower count has stayed pretty much the same for the last 6 months. So it feels good to find something that's working again. That being said, growth is pointless if you don't have a plan to monetize. So watch this video to learn how you can turn your growth into income.